Eric Gudas reads from his collection Best Western and Other Poems, winner of the 2008 Gerald Cable Book Award.
With the dry pop and twang of country music playing from one speaker in the back of the car, my father and I drove through North Carolina at 55 miles per hour. A purple curtain stretched out over the summer sky. My father's face was stunned and bitter, as if something beyond his control had bought his memories for a high price, and he was only now realizing their loss. We had been driving so long that our destination seemed almost a secret to us, to be revealed upon our arrival, and indeed we hesitated when we got to my grandmother's house by the ocean, with lazy curtains dawdling by the window in the breeze. Inside my grandmother's body was laid out, pale-skinned, her hands crossed. I had never seen her before. Aunts and uncles, cousins like gnats moved around us, translucent as the sun went down. In another room, men's voices boomed carelessly, talking of numbers and shapes, of buildings not yet built. My father stood by the coffin, grasping its side, and a blue-haired aunt approached him, rested her hand on the shoulder of his stiff navy sport coat. She died in her sleep, she said. There was nothing we could do. But for my father, I imagine now, his mother had died in his sleep years before that. She died as he slept at boot camp. She died as he reached over and touched my mother's face on the honeymoon bed. He had run away at age 14, bought a ticket for some faraway state, leaving the army, leaving his wife, never making up his mind. What need had he for a mother? And now I think about my mother and the night he stole me from her. We drove for hours then, too, sleeping restlessly in a Holiday Inn somewhere in New England. I had one pair of underwear and a book. They rested on the television console as we tossed and turned. And that was when my mother died for me. She slipped away in that midnight, and her ghost has kept me running long after my father grew too old to run with me. My father found another aunt as we moved toward the door, toward the car, toward the Best Western motel room registered in our name. We're very tired, he said, shutting the screen door, and that was only half a lie, because as soon as we got into our separate beds, we passed into a long, dark sleep. But if we had taken the exit to the highway, we could have kept going for days, driving to distance ourselves from the tendrils of our pasts that clawed and groped for us in the suffocating summer dusk. I wanted to write a poem about a woman who leaves her husband on a farm in Montana to hitchhike for a week and reach a city, where she takes up a room and starts a new life. She'd ride 14 hours straight in the passenger seat of an 18-wheeler next to a trucker named Alan R., whose face would be covered with brushstrokes of stubble, the way jimmies are scattered all over the chocolate donuts he'd eat from a box as he drives. I guess the cheapest room she'd be able to rent would be the one right under the train tracks, and she would have to learn to go to sleep with the endless clatter of the L train above her, the way she learned to take the seasons back home as they came. Bathtubs full of hard snow, generation-long dry spells, the sun flexing its flames like a fist above her. She would probably learn that this life is no better than any other, that the sky still turns to asphalt in the summer and to linoleum in the winter, that city rain makes her face ache with cold the way tears never could, and that you can't make an honest living shucking corn or ironing shirts. I don't know exactly how my poem would end. Maybe with some hysterical drama, murder or scandal, a trail of blood, mumbled incantations, or simply with her marrying again and joining that throng of happiness where promised is out there. Maybe with her just leaving again and hopping trains till she ran out of places to go. What else is there to say about her? For instance, what color are her eyes, green or brown? Or does she tie her hair back behind her when it gets in her face? Even the city she's come to, I don't know about that either. This country is so full of cities that I can't begin to tell about them all. I could sit up and say the names of cities all night and into the morning, and the list would go on, long after everyone in the cities had fallen asleep. This is called The Worm's Reply, and the worms are replying to Baudelaire, his poem The Gladly Dead, translated by Jackson Matthews, and this is just a little excerpt from it. So this is Baudelaire. "O worms, black comrades without eye or ear, here comes a dead man for you, willing and gay. Feasting philosophers born of decay, come burrow through my ruins, shed not a tear. But tell me if any torture is left to dread for this old soulless body, dead as the dead." And this is the worms now. "Starving, will feast on your bloated paunch for breakfast, leaving your thighs for lunch. The wrinkled wineskin of your scrotum, still half full of that gray, tepid juice you people use to make more of yourselves, will linger over for dessert. Your earlobes, too, and fatty fingers are a snack for languid afternoons. And oh, the treat of the spongy pads on your stilled feet that once walked, arrogant, over the dirt, our moist abode. Boring through your linen shirt and poplin slacks, munching your socks full of holes, we're glad you mislaid your meddling soul in the sunlit world. What's left, you might ask? Well, although you cannot squint or touch or smell, you'll still possess acutest consciousness of the way your paltry, flesh-bound usefulness dwindles as tenderly you're nullified. Of course, you'd hoped that, having died once, you could repine and sulk at peace eternally, but until piece by piece we shit your gristle out, it takes so long, you're not finished. Dead man, you were conned by hope of nothingness, heaven's negative. Toothless, will gobble all you still believe as you recline under this mound of dirt. Settle in for the stripping down. In the basement, a scruffy, hulking refrigerator loaded with six-packs, whose freezer was so frost-furred only a marble could have fit inside, droned away. Each winter morning the boiler, its smooth, cylindrical surface too hot for fingertips, clanked and pinged itself awake, while the washing machine and dryer, just below the wooden stairs' dry rasp, made squishy, metallic tumbling sounds. And like a nearby gnat throng, tubes of cold, sickly green fluorescence buzzed almost imperceptibly. The poured concrete floor, scored with oval-shaped hollows and ridges like a wall-to-wall model of the moon, and painted mouse fur gray, reflected watery daylight from windows set at ground level in shiny, slick-looking patches. Against one wall, a work table and set of metal shelves brimmed with tools only my father's hands knew how to use. So ruddy they were almost toast-colored, dense with hair, their pinkies' top joints larger than my thumbs. They sifted through heaps of all-sized screws and nails that overflowed from plastic trays from kitchen matchboxes. My hands, pale pink and soft, barely bigger than a doll's, fidgeted at my sides, stubbornly scared of the sandpaper, gritty as his unshaven cheek, that lay in a drawer alongside chalk stick-sized hunks of solid glue I'd watch him feed into a small black gun whose trigger he depressed to heat the glue, then squirted out like molten cheese from a beak-like metal tip. What a sinus-scraping smell, onto a square patch of rubber for his jogging shoes' broad soles. Drying afterwards, they sent up acrid waves of sweat from their perch atop the boiler. Panting in the doorway each night, shorts stuck to his legs, he was so different from the man who'd left for work in suit and tie. His skin gleamed and reeked with a glaze so thick I shrank from touching him. Salty drops tipped each hair along his chest and arms, drenching his mustache. The hammer, its handles rubber-sheathed, spotted with holes, weighed my hand down, but he hefted it with ease, raising the blunt head brusquely up to thwack each nail into the wood. The gangly saw boinged when he flopped it back and forth and made a kind of zipper crunch slicing through 2x4s. A massive iron vise clenched the corner of his workbench, its lever rounded at each end, corkscrew striped and cool to my touch. I'd screw its lobster-red jaws tight, straining harder with each turn, then slowly pull them apart along a slotted track that squeaked. How many hours did I sit there looking up into his face, shattered in that sallow half-light, sweat inching down his brow as mercury bubbled obscurely behind the level's brittle glass, and sportscasters called out plays I didn't understand from a paint-flecked radio. It seemed impossible that I would ever learn to hold the caulking guns and bulbous-handled wrench, razor blades, each sleeved in thin cardboard, measuring rods, and bright yellow nylon rope looped into arcane knots as easily as he did, those long, unspeaking afternoons we spent together halfway underground. All over, fat gulls lunge and swerve to forage in the mounds of trash, their ruffled wings and bellies cement gray, their screeches mixed with dozers' scraping groans and the garbage truck's hoarse grind. Window down, I breathe a burning mayonnaise smell that scorches my nose and mouth, a stink denser than air and clogged with grit. This place looks like a field where clumps of garbage grow. These gloved men breathing through dust masks, its harvesters. "Park over here!" one in sunglasses shouts above the wind. I've come to unload a rented house's junk, at least 10 years of things that other people left behind. A television, screen smashed in to show its metal brainstem wrapped in multicolored wires, stacks of mold-sheathed newspapers, a roofless dollhouse. "Just dump it there," barks a guy in overalls when I ask what to do with all this stuff. A quarter mile away, there's a precipice. What for? And then I see, far off, a dozer scooping up compacted heaps and hurling them below. This is the place debris is shoveled underground to rot until the end of time, unless time's already ended here. Barehanded, I hurl these wet, grimed, viscid chunks of someone else's life onto the sour earth, startled at the way this ruin pleases me. As my sweat mixes with the rising chalky slime, I wade waist-high through mounds that by tomorrow will lie shoved beneath the ground that has no choice. It must accept this offering. "Keep it coming, man," the masked face roars. This is the last poem I wrote, so it'll be the last poem I read tonight, then I'll introduce Alex. And I wrote it after I read at the Festival of Books, and I think every artist has the artistic self that flies, that lets us get above it all, and then we also have our sort of dirty, competitive artist self. And if you go to the Festival of Books and you're a writer, well, this is a poem about the second self. Excuse me. At the Festival of Books. At the Festival of Books, my wounded ego limps along behind me, like Gollum or Creature the house elf, impotently malevolent, decrepit, vengeful, barely able to keep his tattered, drooping loincloth on. A chain stretches between the fetter attached to my ankle and another fetter that encircles his neck, so that each step I take jerks him closer to me, his Adam's apple chafed by the fetter until he almost chokes. He must long to run ahead of me, so fast I lose my footing and fall face first on the sidewalk. Then he can drag me along behind him as I cry for him to slow down. He won't. On the lawn that faces the poetry stage, he lunges at poets who've risen higher than I, reaching out to scrape his nails on their faces and backs before I pull him back. When my old teacher approaches, my ego screeches and shows his rotting yellow teeth, spittle flying from his mouth. He snarls, "Why have you forgotten me?" Then abruptly kneels at my teacher's feet, begging to be lifted up. "I'm sorry, sorry, sorry." In one hand, he holds another length of chain with which he now proceeds to flail his own back so hard I shudder with each blow. Then he hands the chain to me. As we shuffle through the crowd, he leers at college girls in their springtime shorts and tank tops, tongue lolling from his mouth to lick their breasts and asses. His diaper-like loincloth has no pocket to hold the key that unlocks these fetters. And if I ever had the key, I've long since lost it. No one else but me can see him, my dirty snuffleupagus, my twin, eternal nemesis.